Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is and peace out to the rest of you. Black Heart signing black and again asking you to hit that share button. Thanks to those who have hit like, share, or subscribe. But I'd like for you to definitely hit the share first because that benefits us. Like and subscribe benefit me. Thank you if you've hit any of them. But the message is more important than the messenger. And this message, as you can read, is actually a finger pointing at brothers. And that's about this is really a continuation of when I said, could you niggas please open dictionaries? A lot of us had to go through a teenage nigga phase when we were teenagers. These were, educationally speaking, though, also the most important years. What this has done is it has led to us, both genders, becoming an illiterate ass community. Now, a lot of people like to use certain excuses when I start getting on you about the spelling. And I will confess to a particular bias I have. If you make all these spelling and punctuation errors when you're trying to go against my point, I'm definitely more likely to point them out. Because if you ain't literate, I can't really put much faith in what you say. If you're not literate in your first language and education was free. I know the teenage nigga phase because I was a teenager. And I saw niggas insist on going through it because they didn't have the fortitude to say, I'm not going to do something just because other niggas are doing it. Especially if it's wrong. I'm not going to not do something just because no other niggas are doing it. This is why these are the reasons that we call them niggas. And a lot of us went through that, but now that we in our 30s and 40s, we woke now. And we don't need that really, in all honesty. It's like, see, when Malcolm was a nigga, breaking into homes, picking locks, he couldn't read. He was illiterate. When he decided to go through a transformation, he read and he learned to write. And it got to a point where he was functionally literate beyond his education and beyond his age level. Now, if his first language had been Spanish, he would have had to do the same thing in Spanish, but his first language was English, so he did it in English. That's what he's supposed to do. But he didn't come out some illiterate ass nigga trying to preach and lead the masses, because he would have been mispronouncing words, using words in the wrong context and outside of their true meanings, and he would have sounded like a damn fool. He would not have had the impact that he had because of that. And it would have been our fault. It would have been his fault. He would have undermined his own message if he couldn't say it correctly in English. It doesn't necessarily have to be correct according to Oxford standards, but it does have to be correct in English, even if it's African American English. You can't decide I'm gonna go through this nigga phase as a teenager. Sleep through English classes. I'm too cool for that shit, Learn absolutely nothing about it. And then your 20s and 30s and 40s get woke, but your ass can't write in your own first language. Misspelling stuff, can't punctuate between sentences, thinking you spitting out wisdom. If your message is wise and you can't punctuate it correctly and spell it correctly in your first language, nigga, you make your wisdom sound foolish. You undermine your own message. So I'm mainly talking to the bros about this. Yeah, the women do it too, but we ain't them. And that's a sign, actually, to me, that you spent your teenage years trying to impress they stupid asses by not becoming literate as an adult should be in their own first language if it's English. That's a carryover to me. That's a sign of a carryover. And I'm gonna look at you ignorant ass niggas. And I'm going to say, you know what? Even if this dude is agreeing with me, okay, yeah, thanks, you're agreeing with me, but I can't put much weight in what you say. If that's how you write, I'm not going to get up and say, when are you going to put out content? Doesn't mean that I hate you, but you're a listener and that's fine, but you're not actually a supporter. You can't be if you can't write correctly in your first language. It's not possible for you to be a supporter of mine. You can't support anybody because you can't even support a point. long ass run-on sentences, misspellings, using words that ain't even properly, you're not even using them in their proper meanings. I mean, I was on FB, and some guys were talking about, leaving the matrix, so to speak. Niggas couldn't even spell Columbia. Can't spell Columbia. There's no U in Columbia. We're not talking about British Columbia or the District of Columbia in the United States. Nigga, you're talking about the country in South America. There is no U. Niggas don't know and talk about they want to go there. Boy. And think they writing something that's profound. And they not. And if it is profound, nobody can see the profundity of it because your ass can't spell or punctuate, nigga. But you actually will type stuff and hit an enter button and expect it to have some kind of impact. And wonder why it is that I'm sitting up here sounding as snobbish as I'm sounding. Well, it's because, frankly, bro, it's good that you woke up. It really is. But, you see, when you wake up, you do what Malcolm did. A lot of you niggas want to wake up when you're old. You could have bypassed that nigga stage and been awake when you were younger. Saved yourself some time. And it would have shown up in your writing. But what did you niggas want to do? So when these sisters come on our pages and they can't spell and they're illiterate, you can point that out and weaken their arguments, but you can't have that same weakness yourself. And too many of you got it. And not only does that show up in your writing, but your reading comprehension as well. When someone else writes something and you read it, you halfway understand it. You miss important details. You can't do stuff like that, especially trying to tell somebody else something. And you need to get yourself strong to a point where you can tell people stuff that they don't know and that they may not even want to accept, but you still need to tell them in a way that they can't really shoot it down. And you're going to have to be able to do some of that in writing. You can sit up and say, yeah, but see, why should I study all this and the sisters can't even do it? Well, it's really not about them. It's about, if you're going to engage them, you're going to do it the right way. That's what it's about. Now, if you're not going to engage them, don't do it. But in that case, we don't need to see what you're writing. Even if you're agreeing with me, we don't need to hear you if you can't use the words in their proper meaning. If that's the case, you just get your passport and bounce and leave us the F alone. See, when you look at Obsidian's writing on his articles, he can write. He's literate in his first language. He's not out there just misspelling stuff. Maybe a few errors here and there, more likely to be typos, but he knows how to spell things if he's thinking about it. Mr. Anderson, well, he types too fast. I've seen that happen before. But he knows how to spell these things if he's thinking about it. He knows the difference between your, and your. He knows the difference between there, and there. He knows the difference between bait and bait. But, a lot of you just, you don't. And you'll just write either one. And you don't care. And then you think you're saying something deep. And frankly, I wonder at times, how do you niggas sleep at night knowing that in a world that is ruled by the pen, how do you sleep at night unable to write anything and barely able to read with proper understanding and comprehension? I can't figure this out. And then you think that you're going to convince some women of something that they didn't know beforehand. You could be right and undermine your own point, and that's exactly what you're doing. It's like you practice for this. Now, if the women were doing this and you ain't, well, then hell, that right there would prove your point and disprove theirs. But you niggas ain't never opened the dictionary, ain't never spell checked a damn word in your life. Get Grammarly, man. Maybe I need to buy stock in that. But then if I buy stock in it and I tell you niggas to get it, stock will probably go down. And I'm talking to brothers who may disagree with me and brothers who may agree with me. Learn to write and punctuate and spell, nigga. You look stupid as hell. So I'm aware that this seems to have come out of nowhere, but it's not. On a subconscious level, people are judging your writing. Even people that are illiterate themselves to a certain extent, on a subconscious level, they're judging your writing. And truth be told, if you can't punctuate between sentences with a period, a full stop, or a question mark when you're asking a question, I'm sorry, but it just does. You could change the meaning of what you're saying. You got to run on sentence. I can't follow it half the time, and don't want to. Sometimes people might say something, maybe it would have been profound and deep, but they couldn't spell and they couldn't punctuate, and I just have to go right past it and ignore it because I get a headache, a stroke trying to read that stuff. Have my wife ask me what's wrong with me. And you know, honestly, I have to read enough mistakes from my students, but they're students, and this is their second language, and you can understand that. But then there are times when I got students that are writing, and this is their second language, and Arabic and English are not related to each other. So they're taking a bigger leap and making a bigger effort, and they're writing much more correctly than a lot of you ignorant-ass country niggas. Then I get home, and I log on and start checking, and I see y'all stuff. And your writing is worse than some of my students' writing. But English is your first language and it's their second. And you know, a lot of times they say, well, what's a good example of good writing so we can model our writing after it? I can't point to you niggas. I said, well, I tell you what. A lot of native speakers in English-speaking countries are terrible writers. So let me give you an example of what not to do. Because I can't really show them too many good examples of people that are writing in today's time and correctly. Just can't do it. I have to write a bunch of paragraphs myself to model this for them. And they actually learn this stuff. And then when I do write on this channel, and I'm careful about spelling and punctuation, it's like it doesn't make a difference. I'm sorry, but y'all sound dumb as hell. Y'all talk dumb as hell, but y'all definitely write dumb as hell, and you undermine your points. Now, if your opposition does that, so what? Let them do it. Don't say nothing to them. You get your stuff right, so that you're not out here misquoting statistics because your ass can't hardly even read, let alone write. And one example of that is when we have the statistics about how many black men are not single fathers. That's true. But how many black women are? It's not 70% of black women that are single mothers, dumbass. It's 70% of black births that are out of wedlock. Now, some of them are including religious marriages not recognized by the state. Some of them are including two-parent households where they're just not married. These are included. We don't have the exact numbers on all of them, but the point I'm making is that if the stat does not say that 70% of black women are single mothers, then you don't get out there and say 70% of black women are single mothers. We're not here to blame anybody for something they did not do. That's not the point. What is the case is that you do have too many of them that are single mothers, and they're having babies by the same 25% of the men. There are other pieces of evidence that back up this so-called 80-20 rule, even though it's not exactly 80-20 or not proven to be exactly 80-20. The rule referred to in that moniker is backed up by other evidence, but that stat is not it. And if your ass is illiterate, you're going to walk around and make that mistake. And I want to give a shout out to NA for pointing this out. Thank you, NA. Appreciate that. You niggas cannot be supporters. You may believe in it, but you cannot be supporters and contribute if you niggas can't write well in your own language. And that includes spelling and punctuation and using words inside of their proper meaning. I'm sorry, but the days of ignorant ass niggas that simply say, you know what I meant. You space N-O space what space E-Y-E space M-I-N-T. No punctuation. And that's sufficing to make your point go across. Those days are over. If you can't write it the right way, you can't read somebody else's writing if they wrote correctly and understand it correctly as they wrote it, then you're a believer, but you can't be no supporter. You can't be a contributor. We don't have time for that. We don't have room for that. There's a reason that there's punctuation. There's a reason that words are spelled a particular way. There's a reason that there are 3 ways to spell the sound there and your. There are reasons for that. And if you, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this to be a snob. I'm doing this really to help you. Because you got to remember what you're dealing with when you're out here trying to, if you're trying to engage with these ladies in debate, or if you're trying to convince good men who are brainwashed and still blue-pilled. Even if they ain't literate, they'll find your mistake and it'll undermine your message in their eyes. Because they'll look and they'll say, okay, see, that's that nigga right there. They won't say, okay, he's right about what he's talking about. They're going to say, see, that's that ignorant ass nigga right there. They can tell from the way that you write that you went through a nigga phase in your teenage years that they probably ain't going through, and they ain't going to listen to you. Because you can come out of that nigga phase. But if you had to go through it and you're talking to someone that didn't have to go through it, it's going to show in the writing. It may even come across in the way you sound when you're talking. And one thing that is going to hold true is that one of the things is that if somebody is smart enough to skip that nigga phase, they don't have to listen to someone who just had to go through it when they were a teenager. And I'm one of them. I don't have to listen to you if you had to go through this nigga phase as a teenager and you could not go against that nigga phase when you came out of it. And how do I know you went against that nigga phase? You learn how to write in your own language correctly. That's one of the ways I can tell. Because nigga phase ain't something you have to go through in the first place. It's something you have to not go through for the betterment of our community. Nigga. And if you think that you had to go through it and it made you a better person today, then I'm sorry. Somebody that was able to bypass that is already beyond you. And if they can identify that in your writing, then they don't have a reason to listen to you, even if you make a valid point. How are they going to know that it's valid? I hope that this helps you out. I'm not going to keep on going and beating a dead horse. Thank you for listening. I'm not saying this out of hatred. And I'm not saying this against anyone personally yet, but I'm about to. Let it sink in. Let it help you out. Open that dictionary. And if you want to reach that Malcolm stage, then do it the way he did it. Blackheart, sign a blackout. Thanks for listening. Assalamu alaikum.